And today I am here with Jason Rosenthal, a lawyer, a father, a husband of Amy Krauss Rosenthal, and now the author of a new memoir, My Wife Said You May Want to Marry Me, a memoir. So, Jason, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. And I want to ask you to start by telling us why so many people know you from the New York Times Modern Love column.
Well, apparently I'm that guy. My wife wrote a beautiful essay published in the Modern Love column of the New York Times, excuse me, on March 3rd of 2017. And it came out 10 days before she died of ovarian cancer. It was a beautiful, beautiful essay written in a style that was just classic Amy. And it was, of course, very, very, very moving and sad, but typical to her writing. It was also really funny and unique and spoke to so many, many people around the world.
And when I read it, when it first came out, I remember not being sure how to respond to it because it hit so many emotions, like the tragedy of her passing so young, but then also the love for you. So tell us, what did she say in this article for the 10 people who haven't read it yet?
Right. Well, essentially, it was in the form of a creative play on a personal ad for me, and extolling my virtues and talking a little bit about how, she and I worked in our relationship and why I would be someone that another person could easily fall in love with. And so she gave me that literal gift of saying, it's okay. It's okay to move on, not just to find love, but she left at the end a literal empty space, a blank space at the end of the essay, which she wrote about as a way for me to find love. But I've used it as a metaphor in so many other ways in my life as I've continued to move forward.
So you also did it. You wrote a Modern Love column, and you had that same empty space. What is it? What does that mean to you, the empty space?
Yeah, it's just permission to try to find meaning in this new version of my life without Amy. We were so intertwined as Amy and Jason, and it's allowed me to really try to find my voice and my way, really, through this world as Jason.
So people who are dealing with loss right now, especially in the midst of COVID, that empty space in Amy's Modern Love column, did that resonate with you immediately? Did that take time before you could see it as a gift?
Oh yeah, no, it did take time. What we can't overlook is the devastating grip that grief can have on one. And I've written about this and spoken a little bit about it too, and that is that grief has no specific timetable, and it's so different for each person going through it. And yeah, so for me, it took me a long time to get out of that tight grip that grief has on you at the beginning of your loss. So yes, it took me quite a while to even be able to put one foot in front of the other and appreciate what I had.
And when you say quite a long time, not to force you into a date, but you did give a TED Talk.
Yeah.
I think, was it a year after Amy passed away?
Yeah, it was April of 2018, and she passed away in March of 17. So yes, that's right. And I had submitted it in writing, roughly. Don't quote me specifically, but roughly in January of 18. And so it was a way for me to talk about some really difficult issues. I had been, as you might expect, inundated by press asking me, salacious details about a new relationship weeks after Amy died, which of course I wasn't interested in doing. But when the opportunity came up to write this TED Talk, it was very cathartic and helpful to me in my process. So yeah, it was very, very difficult to get to a place where I was even comfortable to speak those words without completely breaking down, which I did almost every time I practiced it before that.
Well, you pulled it off when you got up there. It was really impressive, and sends a beautiful message to everybody listening. So just on a lighter note, do you know how many responses you got? And was there a time where you could see the humor and maybe even joy in some of the responses?
I don't have a specific number, but I'm saying, definitely many, many thousands of people reached out to me, not just in emails, but in, written letters and uh, incredible pieces of artwork and trinkets and gifts and things like that. Not just, seeking me out as a mate, but really just offering support to me and to my family, and even to Amy, because they weren't really aware after the essay came out as to how long she would live. So it was a beautiful outpouring, and it took me a while to even, I put them all aside, and it took me a while to even have the strength to look at it all. And as I prepared my TED talk to write it, I talk about a little bit in that talk of some of the humor that I found in going through all those correspondence, and the beauty too.
Did you respond to anybody, or was it one way?
I didn't specifically respond to people at that time. I'm still figuring out a way how to do that. I've had some meaningful exchanges with people since then, since my book came out and all of that, but not exactly. No.
So can we look at some of the lessons that Amy shared and just dig a little bit into that? Because you already discussed the empty space, which I think it's such a beautiful concept and such a gift, and shows her love for you.
Yeah.
She also was on StoryCorps with your daughter, Paris.
That's right.
Yeah. And there were two things in there, the idea of Plan B, and then also the quote that Paris got a tattoo of. So can you talk about those two lessons?
Well, yes, Plan B, of course, is a wordplay, which is typical for Amy in all of her writing, in her children's books and in everything else she wrote. But, for us, we had this incredible Plan A. That Plan A was, when Amy died, we were literally, or what was diagnosed, I should say, we were literally on the doorstep of that, new phase of our life where the kids would be out of the house, and we were really, really excited for that. And we had to pivot and tackle Plan B, which was to get Amy through this disease and see if we could, fight it and get her better. And so that was part of what Plan B became for me and for us. And Plan B also means to be present in the moment and appreciate what is there and what's left behind. And it's something that I think we all need to work on. And certainly I'm working on it still, for sure.
And Plan B was with a BE. So
that's right.
That was
right.
the play. Yeah. Okay. And the quote that of the tattoo is "Make the most of your time here." And
yeah.
I think Amy even wrote it out, so she got to do it in her handwriting as a tattoo, right?
That is correct. It's astonishing. There are probably, off the top of my head, I can think of about 5 or 6 people that have tattoos that have something to do with Amy, which is really a testament to how much she impacted people in this world.
Wow. Okay.
And the quote is really from a beautiful viral video that people should look up. It's called "The Beckoning of Lovely," and I won't give away much more than that, but it started from that.
Great. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
Okay. So you wrote an article in People magazine, and you talk about practicing gratitude. What does that look like?
What it looks like for me is I slowed down soon after Amy died and started a regular daily meditation practice. So that's really helped me a lot to focus on concentrating on living in the present and appreciating the time that we have here on this planet, which we know, those of us, of course, who've suffered loss to someone really young, is that you never know what's going to happen. Amy lived a very, very, very healthy and meaningful and kind life. So you never know what's going to happen. And one of the stories I like to tell is that Amy was obsessed with the play Our Town. And if people recall, in that play, one of the characters comes back to her 12-year-old self and is sort of observing what's going on. And she can't believe that people aren't stopping to appreciate the beauty that's taking place in those little small moments in between everything else, the chaos of life. And that is sort of how, Amy was obsessed with that. And she lived her life that way as well.
That's beautiful. First of all, it's such a beautiful love story between the two of you. I mean, every part of this is just so moving, and so tragic for us to at least share on some level in your loss. Okay, so
Excuse me.
moving out of that story and into all of a sudden you find yourself a single dad.
Yes.
And so you've got this grief and they've got this grief. How does that move forward together in your new role as a single dad?
Yeah, it's really one of the things that I was really grateful I had time to talk to Amy about, because she assured me that I was a pretty good dad myself and I could do this thing on my own. And I had a lot of angst about that and anxiety. But the path forward has really been sort of a team effort. They are now very incredible young adults. And it isn't just me parenting them. It's them sort of helping me through this process as well. And I am really grateful and impressed by them sort of on a daily basis, even though we don't get to spend every day together.
Are you getting some intense time now during COVID with any of them?
I've had a couple of different phases, as we all have during this pandemic. But for a while, I had two of them living here at the house with me, which was really an unexpected and silver lining in an otherwise really crazy and confusing time. And they did decide to come home for Thanksgiving, mostly in support of me and my mother, who we just lost my stepfather in the recent past. So we wanted to be here for her.
So you wrote a book.
I did write a book.
First of all, was that on a list to do, or something you'd always dreamt of?
I assume you're talking about the memoir, and
yeah.
No, I didn't. I was pretty much a quiet guy living here in Chicago, and in fact, if you had Googled Jason B. Rosenthal before Amy's essay came out, I don't even think you'd find my office address downtown. But I was put into a position that Amy, I've come to the conclusion, must have known a little bit about what was going to happen to me by thrusting me into this spotlight. And as a result, there's been opportunities to really speak to people and connect with people. And one of them was through the essay that you talked about that I wrote for the Modern Love column, which has the same title as my book. My wife said, "You may want to marry me." And it allowed me, the publisher, approached me about expanding that into book form. And I said, if I can reach that many more people, I've had such a beautiful response to all of my public speaking and the writing thus far, I'm going to give it a go. So I did.
All right. Well, let's end with what do you hope people's biggest takeaway is from your book?
My book really is formed in three parts. The first part is a really incredible love story, like you mentioned, and talks a lot about relationships and what it's like to be in a meaningful relationship, which has been a surprise to me. I was just really writing about our life, but it's been interesting to people to read some of the things I write about what a meaningful relationship is like. The second part is about what it's like to be with someone you love at the end of their life and how to communicate with people going through devastating loss and grief. So I hope people will get some important lessons from that. And the final part is really about resilience and how we find in unexpected ways a way to be resilient in the face of devastating loss. And I think by telling some of the things that I've done in my own life, it really does give people hope.
I'm going to add one more last question, which
Sure.
is there were people who could not be there for you when you were going through this because they just didn't know how to be a good friend. I'm sure your kids had similar experiences. What do you say? What do you say to people? I mean, it's no one's desire to not be supportive of their friends, but it's so challenging. What do you say to people?
I'm trying to tell people every time I speak about this and ask that really good question that you just asked, is just to say, I know it's simple, but to say something. All of us are confused as to how to approach someone going through devastating loss and grief. But to say something as simple as, you know what, it's really hard for me to tell you how I feel. I just want you to know that I'm thinking about you and that I care. I can't tell you how far that goes. Write that in a card, send it in a text, make a call with a voicemail. That's really the beginning. And there's some other things I write about, but I think that's the biggest way.
So just reaching out is the message here. Don't be silent.
Saying you care. Yeah.
Jason Rosenthal, thank you so much for being here with us right before Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoy your time with your mom and your kids. And everybody go out and buy My Wife Said You May Want to Marry Me, a memoir. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. Happy Thanksgiving.